Hello, my friends. Dusty, aka Fyredust here, and welcome to another edition of D&D Talk, where we examine and discuss a requested topic put forth by people like you. If you'd like your suggestion to be the topic for our next video, we would love to hear your ideas in the comment section below. Today, we will be uncovering the secrets of, if it's not obvious by what's on the screen, or in the title of the video, is Demiplane, the 8th level Conjuration spell. This one in particular actually was requested by one of the players in my campaign, like the last video. And if you didn't get a chance to see that, I'd go check it out right after this. It was pretty nifty. It's about another really high level spell that you might end up seeing in your campaign as a DM, or you might want to use as a player. And if you stay tuned to the end, you will be able to see the reveal of a 9th level homebrew spell that you may want to use in your game. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and begin. Demiplane. What is a demiplane? According to the Forgotten Realms wiki, which we'll be quoting a little bit of today, demiplanes are ill-defined planes of unusually small size that lay either within other planes or outside known planes, depending on which cosmological model one uses. And by the way, D&D 5th edition is using the Great Wheel cosmological model. Demiplanes are typically, if not always, of finite size. In the Great Wheel cosmology, demiplanes are found in the ethereal plane because they are formed from the swirling protomatter that makes up the ethereal, though they lack a set place in the planes. Now, if you do a little bit more digging on the ethereal plane and the difference between the border ethereal, which is entered when you say cast the blink spell, and the deep ethereal, which is entered when you say cast the etherealness spell. Looking into the deep ethereal swirls with large blobs of this proto-matter. Imagine a cosmic lava lamp, if you will, which can form a demiplane when a critical size of these is reached. Powerful wizards, technologists, or demigods can also bend the proto-matter to their will and create a demiplane. These nascent planes might exhibit some of the characteristics of the inner planes or the prime, but with their own rules of gravity, material makeup, etc., and can even support life. Finally, most demiplanes eventually collapse into themselves and break up or merge with another inner or prime material plane. But nevertheless, the demiplane spell in 5th edition is what we're here to discuss, as well as some others that compare to the spell itself, that create an extra dimensional space maybe, or something that can contain yourself or other creatures and objects. So, in 5th edition, Demiplane is an 8th level conjuration spell with a casting time of 1 action. The range is 60 feet. Components are only somatic, no verbal or material components required. And the duration of the Demiplane is up to 1 hour. It's Demiplane. The spell reads, you create a shadowy door on a flat, solid surface that you can see within range. The door is large enough to allow medium creatures to pass through unhindered. When opened, the door leads to a demiplane that appears to be an empty room with 30 feet in each dimension, made of wood or stone. When the spell ends, the door disappears, and any creatures or objects inside the demiplane remain trapped there, as the door also disappears from the other side. Each time you cast this spell, you can create a new demiplane, or have the shadowy door connect to a demiplane you created with the previous casting of this spell. Additionally, if you know the nature and contents of a demiplane created by a casting of this spell by another creature, you can have the shadowy door connect to its demiplane instead. This presents quite a few possibilities here. Upper level wizards creating demiplanes and invading each other's home bases. All this griefing just takes me back to the Minecraft days. Anyways, as we continue our discussion, we must ask ourselves, how does Demiplane work? Well, we know that it exists within the Deep Ethereal, and it's completely sealed off from its surroundings, meaning that nothing from the outside seems to be able to contaminate what's on the inside of this particular demiplane created by this spell. At least the spell doesn't say that things are happening outside. Now, we know that demiplanes exist in the Deep Ethereal, and there's stuff going on in the Deep Ethereal all the time. I'm going to try to post a link to Mr. Rex's video on the Deep Ethereal in the description, but it is certainly worth the watch, and you can find out more about what's going on in that plane there. The demiplane is made of stone or wood. That would imply that, of course, you can eventually furnish the room. You can maybe even perhaps modify and connect the rooms to one another because, well, the walls are made of stone or wood and you cast a spell, so makes sense. The spell uses the word trapped. Feels definitely like a keyword. So it would imply that the spell is incredibly useful for sealing and trapping creatures and objects away. On that note, we should ask ourselves, are the walls indestructible versus damage in brute force? I believe that's up to the DM to decide. It really is. Because, well, the spell isn't specific enough, and it does go out of its way to tell us that the walls are made of stone or wood, which, as we know, classically can be, let's just say damaged in a lot of different ways. Especially if we're talking about, well, we're already casting 8th level spells, what else are we doing? That's for the DM to decide. I'll tell you about my ruling on this particular spell later on, but for now that should be worth asking, right? And what about Dispel Magic or Anti-Magic Field? Those two spells that tend to interfere in weird ways with other spells. I mean, the spell itself says when the door is gone, it's inaccessible to the material plane, essentially. But beyond that, let's say you were already in the demiplane or outside of the demiplane. How would those Dispel Magic and Anti-Magic work then? And, it doesn't seem to have magical protections from being infiltrated via divination spells like Scry or teleportation magic like plane shifting and the like. The spell would make it seem like it's permanent until otherwise noted, right? Maybe Dispel Magic does work and can permanently dispel the demiplane. Or maybe, like we heard about earlier in the video, that it could just end up becoming unstable and collapsing or merging with another plane. Suppose that's also up for the DM to decide. Honorable mention before we start comparing Demiplane to other spells like it. Leomund's Tiny Hut. 3rd level spell, gotta love it. If you need to take a short rest or even a long rest in a pinch, this definitely comes in handy. Love that spell. So, let's compare Demiplane to Mordenkainen's Private Sanctum, a 4th level spell, actually. Abjuration, casting time of 10 minutes, range 120 feet. It has verbal somatic material components, just like the rest of these spells are going to. And the duration, how long it lasts, is 24 hours. There is no concentration on this spell, or any of the spells that we're going to talk about today. Spell says, you make an area within range magically secure. The area is a cube that can be as small as 5 feet to as large as 100 feet on each side. The spell lasts for the duration, or until you use an action to dismiss it. When you cast the spell, you decide what sort of security the spell provides, choosing any or all of the following properties. Sound can't pass through the barrier at the edge of the warded area. 2. The barrier of the warded area appears dark and foggy, preventing vision, including dark vision, through it. 3. Sensors created by divination spells can't appear inside the protected area or pass through the barrier as it's at its perimeter. So, no scrying or anything like that. Creatures in the area can be targeted by divination spells, and nothing can teleport into or out of the warded area. Quite interesting considering what we just read about Demiplane. Also, planar travel is blocked within the warded area. Well, that also makes sense. And casting the spell on the same spot every day for a year makes this effect permanent. But comparing the two directly, the casting time is only 10 minutes, range of 120 feet. At level 8, you can make a silent 500-foot cube. And we're comparing it at level 8 because Demiplane is also level 8, of course. The border is just dark and foggy, so it's kind of obvious that it exists to those outside of it. And it seems to be able to suffer from being dispelled or using anti-magic to pass through it. It does have protection against divination and teleportation, and it is permanent after 1 year of casting each day. And if we compare that to the Demiplane, which is quite a bit smaller, 30-foot cube, but it's a sealed room within the ethereal plane and cannot usually be dispelled or anti-magic field interfere with its existence. The thing about Demiplane is, though, it doesn't have any apparent protection against divination or teleportation. So that's something that's going to come up quite a bit. But it does continuously exist within the ethereal. You don't have to recast the Demiplane spell for your Demiplane that you created to continue to exist. Whereas all the other spells we're going to talk about, you have to keep casting them over a certain period of time for them to maintain their existence. Though it's a 4th level spell, it definitely does have its advantages, and even some advantages over that of Demiplane. Now, let's compare Demiplane to Temple of the Gods. It's another beefy spell. It's actually a 7th level Conjuration spell, a casting time of an entire hour. So we're not using either of these spells in battle, by the way. But Demiplane, we just might. This one has a range of 120 feet. You see the components, and duration is 24 hours. It lasts an entire day. You can cause a temple to shimmer into existence on the ground you can see within range. The temple must fit within an unoccupied cube of space up to 120 feet on each side. The temple remains until the spell ends. It is dedicated to whatever god, pantheon, or philosophy is represented by the holy symbol used in the casting. You could pretty much read the rest of the spell from here. You can create quite a bit of detail within this structure, but it seems to imply that it has a physical representation in the material plane as well as an extension into the ethereal plane. And that also blocks ethereal travel into the temple's interior. Summing up all of the things about Temple of the Gods, we can compare it to Demiplane and see that the casting time of 1 hour does not compare to the Demiplane's casting time of 1 action. Though it has double the range, it's still not practical to be used in battle. The 120-foot cube of space that it can take up is quite a bit larger than the Demiplane, and it is nice that it extends into the ethereal. The advantage of also not being able to be dispelled or anti-magic fielded is nice, but it can be destroyed with the Disintegrate spell. Another high-level magic, but nevertheless, the weakness is quite pronounced, I would say. The protection against divination is nice, and then it also has protection against a specific group of creatures as well, but not against teleportation magic. But we know that Demiplane doesn't either. And of course, it's also permanent after 1 year of casting every single day. But if you're going to cast a level 7 spell every single day, well, you're certainly devoted, that's for sure. Let's compare it now to Mordenkainen's Magnificent Mansion, which is actually a bit more comparable. Essentially is another version of Demiplane, the casting time of which is 1 minute, range of 300 feet, verbal, somatic, and material components, and the duration of which is 24 hours. And essentially what you're doing is you're creating a giant mansion that is a Demiplane in its own right. There's also a door, a portal that you create that allows you to you and other creatures to enter it. It says specifically, you can open or close the portal if you are within 30 feet of it. It doesn't say anything about your action economy that you're using to do such a thing. So it's very loose in that wording. But once it's closed, the portal is invisible. And you can see the rest of the spell is quite extravagant with what exactly you can create with it. It doesn't even say what the material of the walls are made out of. So it's a bit loose with its interpretation where you and the DM can go with it. But comparing it to Demiplane, it has a much larger range and a casting time of only 1 minute, which is not too bad. But 50 10-foot cubes, that is quite interesting. And again, the material is not specified, so maybe stronger than the stone or wood that the Demiplane is made out of. It's a hidden mansion within the ethereal plane. Doesn't seem to be affected by dispel magic, although maybe if Demiplane can, then so can this. It only has one door, and the door cannot be lockpicked. In fact, the door is invisible. Of course, as Demiplane is, however, this does not have any apparent protection against divination or teleportation magic. But it continuously exists within the ethereal, just as your Demiplane does. And of course, that's reading in between the lines, and that can be up for interpretation, as is. But that's just something to consider. We still can't get past the Demiplane's casting time of an action. It's just a bit too good. But as we can see, the space that it has to work with is much smaller than these others. And finally, let's compare it to Mighty Fortress, which we know is the 8th level spell. It also has a casting time of 1 minute, but this spell has a range of 1 mile, meaning that you can be standing atop of your fancy turret from far away, up to 1 mile away, and you see an enemy's location or something or other, and you just point to it, and within a minute, boom, the Mighty Fortress springs up from the ground and causes all kinds of chaos, right? However, we should take note that in the verbal somatic material components, one of the components is a diamond worth at least 500 gold pieces, which the spell consumes. But the duration is instantaneous, and again, no concentration. Pretty nice. A fortress of stone erupts from a square area of ground of your choice that you can see within range. The area is 120 feet on each side and must not have any buildings or other structures on it. Any creatures in the area are harmlessly lifted up as the fortress rises. And boy, does it rise. It gets 4 turrets. You get a small keep inside the middle of the whole thing. The walls are made of pretty sturdy stone. And if you cast it once every 7 days for a year, makes it permanent. Pretty cool. Again, casting time of 1 minute. It's a lot more bearable than the others, but still not a casting time of 1 action. However, the 120 foot by 120 foot perimeter that it creates, with the 4 turrets in the keep, the thick stone walls, and 3-story keep, is pretty nice. But, of course, it is vulnerable to moderately powerful damage. There is thresholds that could be reached, and it could become destroyed, like any other physical structure. It appears to not be affected by dispel magic because of that physical aspect of it and what it does to the land and whatnot, but it still can likely be infiltrated by anti-magic field. Again, it's up to the DM to decide whether or not this thing could be just straight up dispelled, regardless of the fact that it seems to be manipulating the earth itself. But there is no apparent protection against divination or teleportation magic, so let's keep that in mind. And again, permanent after 1 year of casting every 7 days, which most of these other spells have, and the Demiplane just continues to exist. You don't have to keep casting it. And in fact, you just can keep casting it, making others, connecting them to each other. So let's look at the pros of Demiplane. It's instant cast time versus similar spells, the top tier method of trapping and hiding things. It exists within the Deep Ethereal, which is pretty neat. It's customizable and permanent, put that in quotes there, versus some of the cons, which we know it has the shortest range of similar spells like it. But if you can get the enemy within range, that's all you really need. So, whereas the other spells, you're not going to be able to use it in battle. This one you can. We've already discussed several times, it can be magically infiltrated and escaped. It can also be nerfed due to its stone wood walls. So if the DM decides that the walls aren't, some sort of indestructible force, like a wall of force, then stone and wood can be destroyed and broken. So keep that in mind. It can be nerfed. And it also potentially is susceptible to dispel magic or anti-magic if you happen to be maybe inside of the demiplane itself or on the outside of the demiplane. In my personal opinion, that's how I would rule it. If you're in the material plane, you can't cast dispel magic on the demiplane because you can't even see it. But if you were where it was in the Deep Ethereal, then you could, or you could cast anti-magic field to pass through the walls. If you were on the outside or the inside. Things to consider. Again, if it exists within the Deep Ethereal, that means that there is some exploration potential here. We have to think about how do the demiplanes connect to one another. Work with your DM to decide if there's some kind of bridges that you can make to do that, or if you just open a simple doorway that was installed in one of the walls and it opens to another demiplane you've already created. That's an option. How permanent, though, is it really? Are these walls indestructible? Do they have an AC and HP and all that stuff? I wonder. If the spell can trap things like it's supposed to, then shouldn't the walls be indestructible versus brute force? Again, to consider. And what about the dispel magic or anti-magic field conundrum? You got to discuss these things with your DM, or if you're a DM, start thinking about how you would rule it in your campaign. So this is a player/DM created spell. This is the bonus content if you made it to the end of the video. Appreciate you. It is called Abel's Arcane Academy. It's a 9th level spell, actually. So you can think of it as sort of the upgraded version, the 9th level version of the spells we've been talking about. Its casting time is 1 minute, range is 1,000 feet. And it requires a little bit more material components than the others. But it creates a temple of marble in a lush garden perimeter that emerges from a square area, 250 feet on each side. And the garden extends about 50 feet from the perimeter into the center of the compound where the temple stands inside the enclosed area. And the garden can feed up to, it produces sufficient vegetation to serve a 3-course meal for up to 500 people each day. You can sort of see the rest of the description here. There's some similarities in things that it has sort of picked up and borrowed from these other spells. And to make it permanent, you have to cast it every 10 days for a year to make the creation permanent. So it's a fun little spell. It's also available on D&D Beyond. If you type this name up and search for it there, you will be able to add it to your campaign. So enjoy that. And my friend, thank you for watching. If you want to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button to let me know you would like to see more videos. And feel free to share your idea for the next one in the comment section below. This was Demiplane, the 8th level Conjuration spell. Very cool. I had a lot of fun making this. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Once again, this has been D&D Talk with Dusty, aka Fyredust, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.